I will tell you that I love what comes after 1 Corinthians 12, 1 Corinthians 13. And I think that's where Paul was trying to get to say, look, what matters is that we love each other and we manifest this love in tangible ways. It is, I guess, one of the most used passages at weddings. Paul's summary of what love is. Maybe that's not the context he intended, but it works very well to help us to understand how we should behave in a marriage union. So I'm going to read from the top of the handout. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. The lesson is called Putting the Pieces Together. I'm reading from the top of the handout. Since chapter 8, Paul has been addressing problems related to worship in the Corinthian church. He has made it clear that believers should not take advantage of their Christian liberty. Now in chapter 12, he takes up the most important matter that impairs worship in Corinth, the improper exercise of spiritual gifts. When each person discovers and cultivates their God-given gifts for the edification of the body and the glory of the gospel, the impact is enormous. When just a few participate in employing the gifts, it impedes the body's reach and effectiveness. Our passage today is about unity in the body and how each member of the body is beneficial for the purpose of reflecting life in the Spirit as one unified people. Paul takes the path of equating unity and diversity among God's people with a real human body. We often think that certain portions of our body may not be needed for its ultimate function, but take away a functioning aorta valve, an index finger, or an eye, and the body is hindered to small or great degrees. Likewise, we cannot say what role or gift in the church body is more or less important than another. We must understand that each person in the body has a role or ministry to be used in order to build the kingdom of God. I searched for a couple of songs, as is my custom, and I found one by one David Fraser. The tune is Carlisle, Stand Up and Bless the Lord, ye people of his choice. And the song is number 687. And the words say, we are the hands of Christ. He uses us each day to show his love to everyone in every kind of way. We are the feet of Christ. His errands we must run, to fetch, to carry, and to help in every way we can. We are the eyes of Christ. All beauty we must share, and hope one day to bring to you all those who do not care. We are the lips of Christ. He speaks through us to men, to cheer, to comfort, and to tell of his great love for them. The last verse says, we are the friends of Christ. We love his work to do. His friendship is so wonderful. Will you not share it too? Unity. Unity is easier to talk about than to have. We have to ask, what do we need to do to be truly united? And there are times that we unite and then we disunite because of small points. You probably heard me speak about this on multiple occasions. But right now, there's a schism going through denominations that's splitting them apart. It's very sad. The Methodist Church, which is the largest Protestant denomination, has a single denomination. It's split into two, at least two now, very recently. And I said earlier, coming to a denomination near you. Disunity rather than unity. But that's not the theme for today. He's talking about how you help everyone in the congregation recognize they have a role. And that takes some effort, because frequently there are people who don't get noticed at all. And I've made this point earlier, several years ago, when we talked about this passage. Can we find the individuals who feel as though they have no role and encourage them so they feel as though they have a role? And there's so many ministries in this congregation that it shouldn't be difficult to point someone towards something where they can have value. Obviously, you don't want to put people in leadership who you don't vet, you don't know anything about them. But once you understand where they are spiritually, and that may require doing a spiritual gifts inventory or some way to find out what are the gifts that these individuals bring. One of the things I will mention very quickly before we get back to the passage The last several times we did spiritual gifts inventories here, 3 out of every 4 individuals in the Salvation Army here had the gift of helps. And I kept thinking, why is it that so many people in the Salvation Army have the gift of helps? And then it made sense to me. Because we have a mission to serve suffering humanity, people get attracted to that ministry. And therefore they want to do something to serve others. And that's why that is the top gift that shows up in this congregation, and I guess across the International Salvation Army, the gift of helps. There's probably another word to describe that. Gift of service. Okay. So we all can figure out where we fit in. Now let's take a look at the passage. I don't want to cut anyone off because I don't have a lot of direct conversation for today, so I'm happy to let us have a free-flowing conversation about this topic. But I start with question number 1. Paul explains the point he desires to convey in verses 12 through 14 by using the example of a body, a very simple, understandable analogy. Then he continues with a kind of an anecdote in 15 through 17. And I ask, if you were to restate what he says in 15 through 17, using real-life comparisons from the church, what would you say? He uses the example of a foot and a hand and an eye and an ear, saying that you have to understand that you do have a role to play, and you shouldn't say my role is less important. Think of Sunday morning at Royal Oak Citadel, and functions that you might say it's not my job, it's above my pay grade or below my pay grade, and therefore I'm not going to do anything. I recognize there's a need, but unless someone asks me specifically to fill that need, I'm not going to volunteer to fill that need. So this morning, yes?
I was going to say the greeters at the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, they're very important.
They're very important, and so their job is to make sure everyone is recognized and appreciated, welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a responsibility of the body of
Mm-hmm.
the church
Mm-hmm.
to make those people feel welcome as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, say good morning to them, or you know, whatever it is. So it may seem like a small thing, but it's very important because our congregation will not grow or will not sustain if we don't reach out to other people, especially the foreigner, the people who are foreigners in a foreign land.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they're coming in for the first time, it's just very important that we show them love. And again, some people may say that's a small thing, but it's not.
We have some wonderful greeters.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Bless.
Yeah, I have a personal experience with that. I went to a church in Florida, a Salvation Army church, by the way. Nobody was there to greet. I never went back.
You could have gone back and become the greeter.
That is true, but I didn't. There was nobody on the way out that said, thank you for coming.
Yes.
Because you're not connected.
Yeah.
You're not connecting. That's the thing. When you first come to a place that's new to you,
Yeah.
if there's no one there to connect with.
Yeah, that's what happens though.
So we
I found one that they
are on an important point. Sometimes you're part of a congregation where the body functions well.
Yeah.
And therefore you said, there's not much for me to do. Everything is working well. You get your physical, and the doctor says everything is good. You know, I don't have to do very much. But there are times that there are things that you have to ask. How can I be of service? And what I did 30-something years ago was I asked, could I go elsewhere and try to do something that might be valued? So there are challenges there. And then the other thing I want to mention is that sometimes people figure, well, I mentioned above your pay grade or below your pay grade. If somebody is paid to do that job, why should I even volunteer to help out? So sometimes we need to have the body working together more efficiently, where people feel as though they see a need and they jump in and meet that need without feeling as though somebody's going to say, hey, what are you doing? So we have to make sure the system allows for that fluidity There's somebody, a contact person. Hey, this hole is empty right now. Can we fill this hole? And that the person is sensitive, so they don't get defensive. Sometimes on a Sunday morning, people are stressed out because there's a lot of things that they have to manage, and you have to be very gentle in the way you say things because they can bite you. You know, they
Who
can.
puts the flags out? I notice that every week.
Jim Shirkey
And Mark Burke
Yeah,
used to
and
do
Mark
it.
Bird.
Mhm.
And he sets up, well, he usually has to adjust in here.
Mhm.
Gets the coffee started.
And-
And takes trash out.
Yeah.
I also, I don't know how this fits in, but it just keeps coming back to my brain. Cause I kind of rebuked my gift, well, years ago, cause like anybody can set up anything, that's nothing, you know? And then I was watching a show and they said that creativity, I forget this, is a necessity. So like you set the table for people to come in and then they can hear when they feel the,
Mhm.
does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I got. I make the room, I set the room and then I think
So the system has to allow for this so people don't feel as though you're out of line when you're doing things. But there's some people who do a million tasks, Leslie, and you wonder, how do you manage? And this is where you have to learn how to ask for help. I remember when I was growing up, I was leading Sunday school and somebody said to me, you need help. We're going to come and help you. I was so appreciative of that because I was doing everything. I said, you need help. So we have to be the eyes as well to spot where there's a need and ask the question, how can I better serve? Yes, Ellen?
I remember I was talking to Mary, not Mary Massey,
Early?
Pearlie, thank you. And I said to her, when I go, I said, I want all the food ordered in so no one has to cook and nothing like that. And she said to me, but that's the way I give back, that's the way I serve. And she said, so I like coming in and doing those things. And I thought about it and I said, okay, you can help, but there's gonna be other people, you know. You can set the tables, but you don't realize what some people want to do. And by making blanket decisions, you're taking away their ability to serve. So I just throw that out there as people have gifts and people have desires to serve in their own way. And yes.
I'm going to turn to Leslie for a minute because she does a million things.
And what does them well.
Can you tell us of some ministry needs that this congregation has that sometimes fall on one or two individuals because we are unaware, we don't read, we don't pay attention, we don't listen? And how can we better fulfill these needs? Is there a communication mechanism that would work, that would help us to better meet those needs? I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm thinking there must be things that you're thinking, I wish I had somebody else to do this, so I'm not running around.
Through the years, though, I think they've tried different ways of having a communication thing. They've tried
But
many ways, and just seems to fizzle or doesn't really get running.
so sometimes you need better management, maybe, or better communication. I mean, how would we fix that?
I have a way that I've done it with you. When I volunteered to help with something, I invited another person, like Heidi, to come in and help, or Carol Kay, to get them involved. And they really seem to thrive with it. So I think that those of us who have always volunteered to help can bring in somebody new. And so we increase the number of volunteers. Because I know that you have a core of volunteers that you trust to do things and you've done it for years. But again, I think it's our responsibility as the congregation to do our part.
Yep, to bring someone along,
Yeah.
along with you.
Because they might want to do it, but they're afraid, but if they know that you're doing it too, then, you bring them along.
I know there are times she wants a chauffeur, and I don't have a chauffeur's license.
I can drive the vans.
Yeah. And you could get one.
I have a chauffeur.
The court would pay for it.
All right. Any other?
I think the biggest thing that sometimes happens is, I've done this myself 1 or 2 times, maybe more, I don't know. I learned a long time ago, if you ask somebody to help, you better not do it before they get there.
Yes.
You know what's nice is, I think because I'm going to approach her today, in fact,
Is it good?
Colleen Austin. She always says, thank you for the honor of letting me serve, or, she sees it as, she's thankful
Ministry.
for the ministry, yeah.
Mhm.
I also think that sometimes when it's just written down on a paper that they need this, people read it and say, I don't have the skills to do that. And they might have the skills to do it, but don't know enough about it.
Yes.
But that turns them off. They look at it and go, I don't know if I can pull that off.
Or they
Or I
say,
can pull it off every week. Or I could, so what does this mean? Am I gonna be by myself doing this? That type of thing. So I think it is communication of, and that's why bringing somebody along, or if you see something in somebody that says, I probably could do that job, you talking to them about, maybe it's just, because I think sometimes you read it and you go, nope, that's not me.
Or
And it
you-
really could be you.
or you say, if someone asks me,
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
but if no one asks me, I'm not going to overstep my boundaries. Because somebody else might be a better person to do it.
And
Yes.
it's like with pasties, that's a perfect opportunity. Anybody can peel a carrot. And I know that Roberta has brought a friend in to help, and she comes every year. She loves doing it. So peeling potatoes or chopping rutabagas, whatever it is, it's an easy way. Plus, there's conversation going on. So there's good fellowship, which, is priceless.
What happens when you cut your finger and you have to rush to the...
Get your finger and have to be rushed to the hospital.
Oh.
Well, we always have.
to the following week.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Not in the pasties, no. But there were opportunities to just show people, inviting them to the women's dinner, reaching out. People love when you ask them.
They like to be needed. Most people do.
Question number 2 I asked from verse 19. If they were all one part, where would the body be? And I said, how would you answer Paul's question there? Obviously, it's a rhetorical question. If they were all one part, where would the body be? You would not have many functions. There'd be many things that would not be attended to. And I was thinking on Monday night at the concert, there were so many things that had to be done. And I don't know if the communication was very clear. So you have a few people running around to do a million things just to make sure the concert is done well.
It was spectacular.
But behind the scenes, there's so many things that needed to be done.
Well, and some of the things I heard was, we didn't get a lot of communication on this. So they didn't really know what they're going to need to ask even in advance.
Right.
That we're going to need this stuff until it started happening.
Mhm.
So that's why 2 or 3 people are running around, because at that point, you're the only few that know what needs to be done, and you don't have time to pull other people to help them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think it was just, that was a communication that they're coming, but it was, too many people's hands were in the coming, but not the
planning.
delivering of what that would entail.
That makes it even more spectacular that was going on.
Right.
And we didn't notice.
Yeah.
Right.
We just enjoyed it. It was fantastic.
So we thank all of those who work behind the scenes and are stressed out and smile through the storm because we don't know what's going on. So as I think how Leslie holds this place up, I'm thinking, wow, I'm always trying to honor and appreciate her because I'm thinking there's so many things that need to get done. So, yes.
I think it's also kind of reflective of who the Lord is, right? How many fish do we really need, right? But the Lord has made so many millions types of fish. How many birds do you really need to live on this earth? But the Lord's made so many different types of birds. And so there's something in beauty if the Lord allows there to be so much diversity and difference in his body, you know, in gifts and talents in the whole world. And I just think in some ways that's very much reflective of who the Lord is, with always this super abundance of diversity in his creation.
Of course, some of the diversity includes snakes and mosquitoes.
And they have a role, right?
In the food chain, maybe.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I wish they'd stick to that one.
Right, they're always driving somebody else.
That raises another interesting issue. Sometimes, and this is what Paul was dealing with, there are people who are part of the body who create problems.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you if you know anyone in this body who creates problems. But
We're still in Corinth.
that's the point, yes. They create problems. And some of it could be, I'm here, you're there, and you will do as I tell you. Or it's just my personality, and people get turned off by my personality. Other people have a winning personality, and others are drawn to them. And that's a danger as well, because you could end up following the person in the wrong direction. So one has to have the gift of discernment to make sure that we are not drawn away by desire to honor and respect certain people. I'm not saying not to respect, but to make sure that we are measuring. Measure twice, cut once, to make sure that we are not going off in the wrong direction. All right, verse 21. Question number 3 says, if you were to restate verse 21 using real life comparisons from the church, what would you say? We were just trying that for verses 15 through 17. So how would you restate verse 21 with real life examples from the church? We're talking about what we don't need, or one individual or one group. Are there things or ministries or things like that? I won't say individuals, but certainly ministries that figure, well, we don't need that, or this person shouldn't be doing that. Yes?
Oh, go ahead. This is a really trite example, but Addington and I were talking about this maybe 2 days ago. When he first came to the Corps, Dale was in charge of the band and wanted to get a certain sound. So Addington played the cornet, but Dale said, you're going to play the E flat. And so I said, why can't you just play what you want to play, right? But I'm not musical. And so Dale, as the person who was over the music, he understood the sound that he was after and the richness of that sound. And so you need someone to be able to say, here's what we need, here's what we don't need. And even though we had the talent to play the cornet, the person who was in charge of the ministry said, you're going to be on the E flat. So, I would say, well, then we don't need the E flat. But what do I know? I know nothing. And I just think that's an example because there's also always a leader, or there should be, who is helping to move the body in the direction that it needs to be moving in, to do the ministry that needs to be done. And they understand the bigger picture, even if the individuals who are participating may not. Sometimes it's out of ignorance.
Clean the toilets. Yes, Ellen?
I think with volunteers, they may come and say, I want to do this, and we never want to turn anybody away, but we can redirect them saying, we appreciate that, but right now, those jobs are covered. Would you be able to do this? So we don't have, I would never say no to somebody. I would be encouraging, but redirecting as well. Everybody can do something.
I once heard someone use the expression, someone I love said that they were told to bloom where you're planted. In volunteering, you have to come with an attitude of, I want to bloom where you plant me, as opposed to this is what I want to do. Because you could have everybody piling up doing the same job to be with their friends, and there are other jobs that don't get done. The postal food drive is a good example of that, where you find, okay, you have to tell people, you go here, you go there, because we need the system to flow. We can't have a backup. So that's another good
The
example.
flip side of that, though, is sometimes there are people who want all of that control. So it's, the hand can't say to the foot, I don't need you.
Ooh.
You do need the foot, and you do need the hand. You need the whole body to work together is the issue, right? So there are times when, because for whatever reason, it could be that people are comfortable doing certain things a certain way, like having people come to set up and having it already set up, because they've taken that control. Because then they get the pat on the back, or it could be a pride issue. It could also be an issue of feeling a little insecure in your role. So I think we have to also be aware of that when he's saying the hand can't say to the foot, I don't need you, or the foot to the hand, I don't need you. We do need them. And it's like Helen said, when people come in, and even those in our own group,
That's a good greeter.
right, we need to acknowledge their value to what is being done.
Good management principles say that you also want to direct
Right.
towards, yes, Major Jean.
Sometimes when you get old, you begin to wonder whether you fit in any place.
That's true.
That's very true.
To me, the only place, I don't know about the only place, but the one place that I can express my gifts is where I live.
Yeah.
God has opened some doors for Joyce and I for witness that I don't find anywhere else.
That brings another important point. At some stage, we retire from certain roles, and before we retire, we want to make sure we've empowered others who will take over the role, and not to feel as though we need to keep control, but we lead others towards how to take over, and it's like a relay.
Easier said than done.
That's true, but you want to hand off the baton.
Tried so hard.
Sometimes you have to run two legs of the race, yes, because there's no one to hand the baton to. But you want to make sure that somebody's being prepared to receive the baton. And that requires effort. You not groom is a terrible word nowadays. You prepare someone in the ministry. Okay, we need this to be a functioning ministry. You need to be prepared to take over. Yes.
Just where he needs me, my Lord has placed me. We need to think about that. Where we are needed, God has placed us.
Of course, if there's excess supply, then you will not get the role that you desire or you feel you're talented for. So there are challenges there, and management principles might tell us how to organize that in an efficient way, but in a godly way as well. Yeah.
I know what Major Jean just said, though. There's so many people where you live who may not know Christ. Right. And so the gift is still the gift. And the Lord is like, now I need to dispatch the gift here. So all of these people, I can make sure that they've heard of me so they can come and be with me. And so I love the way the Lord does that. It's like, okay, you're done over here. Now we're going to move you over here.
Yes.
Just something I thought about as a young officer, I was paid to do all this stuff. Right. And so it took a long time, probably a few years, before I realized I did not have to do everything just because I was appointed to this corps. I can let people do it and be, walk away from it and go, whatever they do will be fine. But there's this, it was for me probably a learning, growing thing of letting go of that pride of everything being perfect the way I thought it should be, and letting that it was still perfect, but I didn't have to do it, and praise God I didn't have to do it. But it took me a long time to get past that, and I do think that people sometimes get positions or have something that it's not that they really want to keep it the whole time, but they don't know how to let go of stuff and relax in it being different than how they would do it. Still being done,
Mm-hmm.
but different, you know, and still being very nice, but still different, you know. So it's a control thing of learning to let go of our, you know, our thoughts that, well, I do get paid to do this, you know, and somebody else, it's a volunteer and they, you know.
Yeah, so continue on that thought. If you know that you have no control over when you leave the appointment, then you want to make sure you're handing people responsibility.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you leave and it falls
I mean,
apart.
one of the best things that ever happened to us was when we went to Champaign, there was somebody that did the stats.
Yeah.
Every week they did the stats. They put them on the computer and everything. We're just like, praise God. That's the stats. I mean, one, we had been on divisional staff, so we didn't even learn the new stat program.
Mhm.
They wouldn't teach it to us. And so you get to a core then, and you're like, and she just did the stats every week, and you're just like, this is wonderful. I just have to turn in, you know, she would pester me about my visitation stats. I mean, she wrote down everything, you know, I mean, she would go to the people, Sunday school teacher that didn't turn in their, you know, left their role because they didn't have anybody that they set up to do it. You know, she would go to all them. As officers, we did not have to do that. It was a, you know, same with treasurer. We had a great treasurer that took care of the money every week, give us a sheet, wrote down who went to the altar every week on this piece of paper. You know, that was wonderful, but that was all set up before we got there.
Yes,
We
yes.
did not mess with it. We let it be.
I don't want to cut off anybody else. There's an old saying that if you want something done well, give it to the busiest person. And sometimes you end up
I've heard that.
having certain people who are always overwhelmed with all these things to do. And sometimes they want to do it because they want it done right too. Figure rather than delegate. And that's another thing you have to learn. Yeah.
It's hard.
But learning to lead in a way that helps others to feel involved is important. It's kind of like having your kids do chores. They're not going to do it at your level, but part of growing up is that they have to prepare for the future. So the church is like a family in that regard. You make sure people are learning and moving towards maturity. Yes. Oh, I thought I saw a hand over there. Somebody else. All right. So I guess we don't have a lot of time left. Question number 5. In what ways can we ensure that all members of the body are treated with value and worth? This is a tough question because sometimes you think you're treating them with value and worth, but they don't feel that they're being treated with value and worth. So maybe you have to learn to ask a question where they can tell you how they feel and be willing to listen.
You gotta be honest. If you think they're worth value, you gotta be honest and let them know. Or just don't go out of your way to say, oh, I think you're great, that when you don't, you're not being really honest with them. You know what I mean on that?
I do.
I would say that many people feel unappreciated
Yeah.
because others who can say a kind word say nothing. And all you want is, like we were told earlier, Roberta said, somebody to greet you and say welcome. And that's an easy role to fill. So a comment card saying, you know what? Here's a hole you can fill. Get somebody by the door who has a good personality.
John Aaron should be back there.
You just want to make sure it works, yeah.
He does have that person.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You can have the wrong person. I can tell you, the corps I went to for a few years, every Sunday the person would say to me, thank you for coming. I'm thinking, I'm a member here. What are you saying? Thank you for coming. Thank you. So the person was not aware.
Right.
They just had this line they used, thank you for coming. Thinking, you don't recognize me? Yes.
What do you think, Addie, of the phrase, use it or lose it?
That too.
I'll let somebody else answer that because there are different ways to interpret that. Use it or lose it. Anybody wants to touch that? What are you talking about? The gift?
Talking about you.
The gift. I'll say certainly use it for the Lord. Because some people continue to have their gift.
Right.
And they just don't use it in the right way. Or they use it in a self-promoting way. So they use it, but all honor and glory goes to them. And I have to confess this. One of the saddest things about the way church is done globally nowadays is a focus on the stage. I've said this, one of my pet peeves. And we don't focus on the stage, the people on the stage. And you don't focus on the congregation, the body. So that's like a perfect analogy for what's going on here. So people looking in just see 5 or 6 people who will do things with a certain level of perfection. Because the impression that is given, oh look, at this church, things are done with perfection. And I think we need the imperfect to show through as well. You need the imperfect to show through, to show that we are a body trying to coexist and doing an okay job coexisting, as opposed to a few people who are doing everything perfectly and everybody else feels like, I'm out of sight, out of mind. Yes?
When I think of the use it or lose it, I think the gifts are given without repentance, right? So before you ever came to know the Lord, you had it. So the it that you lose is the opportunity to serve the Lord in this way with this gift. And so that's the sad part, that you don't even realize until we get to the other side, when the Lord was like, oh, I had this for you to do, this for you to, and you didn't do it because you were not using what I gave you. You don't lose the gift. The gifts are given without repentance, but you lose the opportunity to serve the Lord. And he raises somebody else up because his will's going to get done. His purpose is going to get done regardless.
You can also lose confidence.
Yeah.
Your confidence to do it.
For instance, give me an example.
So a couple of years ago, I got an email from Heidi. Will you preach on this Sunday? I hadn't preached for 17 years. And it was a confidence issue. I mean, it took me 3 weeks of prayer, deep prayer, before I responded to her. It took me, with a lot of butterflies, to stand up behind the pulpit and actually preach again, because my confidence level had decreased.
Okay.
And it was something you used to do all the time.
All the time, yeah.
All the time.
Right.
Question number 7, unless there's more conversation. Question number 7. In what ways can we foster an if one part suffers, every part suffers. If one part is honored, every part rejoices atmosphere in the church? I'll say certainly here in this congregation. In what ways can we foster this attitude of if one part suffers, every part suffers. If one part is honored, every part rejoices. There's an old adage that says misery loves company. And on the way up, it's different. On the way down, people move out of the way when you're falling, you hit the ground. So anyway, that probably went nowhere. But there are times that we don't share each other's pain. Partly because we don't know, and sometimes we hide our pain because gossip. Oh, yeah. So in what way can we foster an if one part suffers, every part suffers attitude, or if one part is honored, every part rejoices atmosphere?
Well, I do think it comes down to sometimes, especially pain or something going bad in your life, or your kids doing something that they shouldn't have done or whatever, is the whole gossip thing. But on the same instance, then you're sitting by yourself in pain and you don't get that support of your congregation. It's that fine line of, there's got to be a safety feeling of feeling like, I think that's why small groups are great, because in most cases in small groups it says sort of what's said here, unless somebody says it's okay to tell other people, don't say it to other people. Because then you have a group of people that know that you're in pain, that you're hurting about something, that something's coming up. Feeling comfortable of saying I'm in pain, or this has happened, or we're in financial dyers, or whatever, because there are people that, yes, will gossip, but there are people that will help you. Or have been through something, and many times we don't get the help we need because of worrying about gossip instead of saying, I'm just going to be an open book because these are people that are supposed to love me. And I get it, and there may be, we have a big congregation, there may be people, even in small congregation, there are gonna be people that aren't gonna love you, that are gonna just gossip.
Mhm.
But there are many that are gonna love you.
I have a confession to make. There was this lady at work who, if you asked her, how are you? It was a 5-minute conversation about how she was. And after a while, I would just say, hello, call her name, and keep moving. Obviously, in the Christian community, now we have to ask the question, do we say hello and move on? Or when you ask, how are you prepared to sit next to the person and let them tell you how they are? So you can't do it when you're in a rush. How are you? Because you're hoping they say fine. And sometimes out of obligation, people say fine, but it's not fine. And you say, oh, everything is perfect. And it's not perfect. There's a lot of hurting going on, silent hurting. So I just put that out there to say that we have to be sensitive. If you ask the question, how are you? Be prepared to listen. And sometimes it might take probing too. You might have to ask the question using different words. Because how are you gets that standard, fine, how are you response. So there might be a different way to ask the question. And Ellen gave an example of that. Is today good for you? I think you mentioned that. Is today a good day for you? A different way of asking the question to give the person a chance to respond. Does that mean? All right, so as we think about that, question number 9. Paul says in verse 31 to seek the greater gifts. And some translate greater as helpful gifts. Why is it important for the body to exercise their gifts, especially those that are helpful and build up the body? Why is it important for the body to exercise their gifts, especially those that are helpful and build up the body? I think we've answered it already, but just for closure's sake.
To help the body grow.
Mm-hmm. And if not grow, certainly stay healthy. Because it might be the case that for a congregation that even not growing or shrinking, you still need to ask that question. And frequently what happens is that when the congregation starts to shrink, people start to leave and go elsewhere. And one congregation's loss is another congregation's gain. But if mechanisms can be put in place to stop the bleeding, tell individuals, so basically it is, how do we love? How do we love each other? In a way that will cause individuals to feel a part of the body and not saying, okay, I'm the arm, you don't need me, I'm gone. And they have a one-armed situation going on here. I want to close with a song, but I want to let somebody...
What are the greater gifts?
Huh?
What are the greater gifts?
Well, I mentioned 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He's about to segue into 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. That is my take on this, that the greatest gift.
My commentary says that, just one line of it that I think is really good. It says that best might be defined as the gift that's most suited for the given situation. That best, the best gift or the greatest gift, might be the gift that, of all of those gifts, that is most suited for the given situation. So in other words, the gift that is best is the one that is best suited for the situation at hand. I think that's actually a very interesting way to think about desire the greater gifts.
Mm-hmm.
My commentary said, gifts of revelation, knowledge, prophecy, and instruction are greater gifts since people can hear, understand, and be helped through them.
I'm going to stick with love. We can all learn to love.
I'm sure
But it could be all of that.
I love that passage in Romans 12, 6 through 8, which talks about the sevenfold gifts of the Spirit.
Okay.
Paul uses there a select group, and I'm wondering if that might be the greater gifts. Can I read it?
Sure.
It says, because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you, just in His grace, God has given different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the gift of prophecy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving, serve. If your gift is teaching, teach. If your gift is to encourage others, encourage. If your gift is giving, give generously.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. If God has given you leadership ability, well, get with it. And if you have a gift of showing kindness to others, do it gladly.
Yeah.
Sevenfold gifts of the Spirit, Romans 12.
So what I would say, not disagreeing, what I would say is sometimes other people get to assign you and you don't get the chance to use the gift in a certain place. And therefore you might say, hey, I'm not using my gift here, maybe I need to go elsewhere. So this is me believing that as he segues into chapter 13, the greatest gift is love. I want to close with a song I have at the end of the handout. John Fawcett, back in the 18th century. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love. The fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Before our Father's throne we pour our ardent prayers. Our fears, our hopes, our aims are one, our comfort and our cares. Verse 3 says, we share our mutual woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows the sympathizing tear. When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall still be joined in heart and hope to meet again. He closes in verse 5, from sorrow, toil, and pain, and sin we shall be free, and perfect love and friendship reign through all eternity. Let's pray. Dear Lord, bind our hearts together with cords that cannot be broken. Help us to recognize that they are gifts and they are needs, and if we would be willing to be used by you, that you will put us in a role that will help us to be a useful part of the body. May we seek these opportunities and privileges that you give to us, joyfully, willing to serve, and willing to be of use to the body. Thank you for our time together. May we go to our holiness meeting with a sense of joy, desiring to serve, to greet others, and to help them to feel a part of the body. Thank you for this in Jesus' name. Amen. Go serve.